Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
And welcome to our Texans postgame show. Robert Land, along with my co-host, Sports Radio 610's Shaun Bijani. And if you're new to the party, we've been around for a while. 45 years in journalism between the two of us, over 35 years covering Houston sports. So you're in good hands. And Shaun, I'm thinking maybe Kyle Allen isn't the answer.
Hey, we knew it was going to happen, right? I mean, it was just the devil was in the details. Kyle Allen wasn't going to turn this offense around because, early on, I think we all had this idea anyway, and it was proven early on. Kyle Allen's just a puppet for Pep Hamilton's offensive scheme, and just how putrid this offense is in totality. The offensive line, I can't remember now if he'd gotten sacked before the end of the game, but 20 sacks the offensive line has given up over the last month. And there's like 8 teams out there that I haven't given up 20 sacks all season long. That's just how bad it is. And 16 total yards rushed for by Dameon Pierce in 2 weeks' time against the Commanders. And then in today's game, I mean, that's all you need to know. There's one takeaway that I had from this one. One, there is not one player that gives you a better chance to win than the next guy from this Houston Texans team. So don't give me that this week, Lovey. And you've got 7-8 games left to go in this season. My guess is, since you didn't get to see it today, you're probably going to see Davis Mills before the month is out of December. They're going to flip-flop whoever they can. As Lovey will probably continue to tell us, whoever gives us the most juice or the best chance to win in a given week, that's who he's going to go with. And boy, that's going to get real old real quick.
You talked about the offensive line. We're going to get into that a little bit more, but Front Runner says that O-line is trash. It's been looking like that. And Shaun, it's a little frustrating because they didn't look this bad early in the season. It just feels like they let go of the rope somewhere. And it's not just the guys in the middle that everybody always focuses on, whether it's Kenyon Green or, obviously they haven't had their starting center all year long. We lost Justin Britt after game, was it 1 or 2, but he's been gone for almost the entire year. And so that's been an issue, but you got issues with Tytus Howard now. Tytus Howard has become just awful. I don't know what's happened with him. I don't know if there's an injury involved or he's just not right, or this is who Tytus Howard is. If it's who Tytus Howard is, boy, the one thing that you thought you might not have to worry about drafting is a right tackle this year, along with, your left tackle on the offensive line, but maybe that's an issue now too.
I think it's a little too early to tell. And look, you obviously saw something today that, gave you that, helped you form that opinion. I need to go back and look at it and see exactly what you saw from Tytus Howard. Maybe not even just today, but last week against Washington as well. I really kind of felt like Laramie Tunsil and Tytus Howard have been two of the biggest bright spots in the entire offense all season long. And I'd watched them a little bit more closely than I did today. Today was a real challenge. I don't have like ADHD or anything like that, but it was really difficult to stay focused and pay attention to this game at times because it was just that bad. I will say this, I was more or less concerned with, just individuals on this team, in both phases, and really just both phases, not special teams, because I just think Frank Ross, and when you're those kind of fringe guys anyway that are contributing on special teams, that's where you see the added value. That's where you create added value for a spot on a team. But this season's lost, and I think the players, while they wanted to change at quarterback, they wanted to inject some life in this offense and this team. They saw early on that when the Dolphins were bringing the house, when they were playing, with a full magazine, the Texans just aren't up to par. They proved kind of to themselves that Kyle Allen's not the answer. that they're not that close. They're not ready to win. They're not that good. And it's all of the things that everybody on this team has been talking about, in particular over the course of the last month, month and a half. I mean, you heard it from everybody. You heard it from the coaches, etc. And I think that proved to a lot of people that they're really, really far away. And so what I kind of worry about now is, well, if you're Lovie Smith, you make this quarterback change to help inject some life and keep the locker room engaged and intact. I still think it's a very difficult job, and it might have gotten that much harder after the performance in the first half by the Texans today, because what you have to guard against now, and it's almost impossible to, is they're guys that go out there and they're playing for themselves. They're not pulling together. They're not pulling and pushing in the same direction from a team perspective. It's about an individual game now. And so I think that's a very difficult thing to kind of coach with going forward.
Goyo says Texans are trash in every phase. They need to sell the team and get a real owner that cares about winning. Well, the guy that's going to sell the team is the guy that doesn't want to sell the team. So you're not going to get that. Stream on. You got to hope that he wakes up, but you got to hope that Caserio is the guy going forward and he can put the right people in place. And we're going to see about this. And by the way, I need some comments. So let's hear from you. You can also subscribe to our channel. It's the best way to support the show. I've been doing the show for 9 years. We've been doing video for now almost a year. We do every Texans postgame. We did all the Astros postseason postgames. So we're going to make it fun. It's not just Texans. So we got other stuff to talk about. I want to talk to Shaun a little bit about the Rockets towards the end of the show because I need a palate cleanse. I can't do this for a whole 30 minutes. I do want to go over a few possessions, though, Shaun. And trust me, I'm not going to bore people with a ton of specifics about the first few possessions, every single play, but I just want to go over some stuff. In the first possession, it was the usual 3 and out. Pep kept it vanilla, 2 runs on first and second down. Then Kyle Allen had to throw it away on third down. Couldn't find anybody open. Dolphins drive down for a field goal. The usual soft zone leads to a big pass play to set it up. I hope that soft zone is going to go the way of the dodo bird, but the Texans' next possession ends on third down when Melvin Ingram, and you asked me about it, Shaun, he gets beat by Tytus Howard. And it's just not that he's looked porous. He was getting trucked during this game multiple times. And that's been an issue. He's either whiffing or he's getting trucked. And like I said, this is a very big concern moving forward because you have all of these holes to fill on defense in the front 7. The quarterback, we know. You want to add something maybe to the receiving core. But then you have to add Tytus Howard along with you're looking for one guard position and a center. That is frustrating to me because I really felt like once he moved over to tackle, we would see a much better Tytus Howard this year.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, that's something I'm going to have to go back and rewatch. And look, at the end of the day, like you knew the Dolphins coming in had above average edge rushers and interior defensive linemen. They were very, very good across the board. That defense has been doing some really disruptive things all season long. And so I'm not surprised. And look, sometimes you're going to get beat. Sometimes it's not going to be your day. I don't know if he is playing through an injury. That's something that I haven't heard. But I would just say in general, I am far less concerned with Tytus Howard on this team right now. And again, to me, before today, and really before I'd say the last couple of weeks, which I really felt like there was a vibe, there was an aura of just deflation, from the locker room and just from the overall energy, the feeling of having been there every single day with this team, for the little that we are. I just think that when you go through adversities like this, and they're compounding now week after week, first it was Cooks, and then it was, Collins, man, he's not back yet. And boy, now we're going through a quarterback change. Really the last 3.5, 4 weeks for this team has been extra distracting, trying, if you will. And so that can play on some emotions. And I'm not building excuses or anything. I mean, it is a bad team, but sometimes you're going to look a heck of a lot worse or play a little less inspired football when all of those outside things are going on. And then two, sometimes you're just going to get beat. The Dolphins are really freaking good. Mike McDaniel's got a really good football team over there. And not once should you have ever thought in this second half, as the Texans cut the lead in half, that they had a hope or a prayer in making this a one-score game. And even if they did, having a chance to pull it out. When you need 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion, just to force a ball game to go to overtime, like, come on, get out of here. You're 1-8-1. You're not trying to do that anyway. If Lovie Smith, felt like his team had any nuts, then they wouldn't have kicked the field goal on 4th and 4. They would have gone for it, from the Dolphins' 12-yard line or wherever they were. I mean, what this team is at this point in time. And Lovie Smith is just trying to string it together, keep his guys together, and he's going to have a hell of an incredible last 2 months to do that in this season.
Who are you talking to, Sean? We're talking to Texans fans. They know they don't have a chance. Come on. well, hey, I'm going to give our fans credit. They know, they're watching. They had turned the television off. They didn't think they had a chance. I mean, you've got to be the most Cinderella. You've got to be the most positive, upbeat. Like, my life is just the greatest when I'm in jail and I've lost all my money. I mean, I don't know who thought that the Texans were going to come back. I was just like, who are you talking to?
Well, who are the announcers talking to? I mean, they're trying to keep you engaged.
Well, the announcers, they've got a job to do. They're trying to keep you watching the game. Who cares what they think? They don't know anything about the Texans. You know that when you watch this team, you watch the games every week. They never know anything about the Texans. It's unbelievable.
You do have to reiterate some of this stuff because, trust me, there are plenty of Texans fans out there that can't see the forest through the trees, and so I wrote a couple of columns on the quarterback change this week, and just looking back at some of the commentary that my article was getting on Facebook and some of the other social media platforms, it's pretty eye-opening and like head-scratching to see that people, just don't understand what is really going on here. Like, they still think and they believe that there is this effort by the organization, to instill some life into this team. You're in
it doesn't matter what the organization does. There's no look. I'm going to make this very clear to everybody. There's no talent. There's nobody there. This team does not have talent. Period. It doesn't matter.
Robert, that's my point. Those are the fans that I'm speaking to. That's my point. And I've been writing about it all season long. It's an organizational tank. The players aren't tanking. The players aren't good. That's why it's an organizational tank. Nick Caserio constructed this roster with a bunch of Jags. And yeah, there's some good young talent on the team, but you see just how good Dameon Pierce is by himself without a good quarterback, without a good offensive line. He's rushed for 16 yards on 15 carries the last 2 weeks. You've forgotten about him. That's how bad it is.
Well, it's not that they've forgotten about him. It's the fact that when he doesn't have room to run because the offensive line stinks and there's no threat that they're going to throw the ball, period. And they're not going to throw the ball down the field. And every possession is 3 and out. Then how is he going to get carries? You can't make carries. You can't make yards if you don't get carries, and you can't get carries to make yards if your offensive line doesn't do anything. And I mean, that's all a part of it. And look, Dameon Pierce, I just want to say the best thing that could happen is that you don't run Dameon Pierce a whole lot the rest of the way, and that he doesn't get these carries because you want him fresh for when this team maybe can be a little bit better. It might not be next year, and maybe 2 years down the road, but you basically save the tread off of the Dameon Pierce tires at this point.
Oh, you're right. But I don't want to hear any conversation going forward about how the guy's getting too many touches. He's carried the ball 15 times in 2 weeks.
Well, I'm sure nobody's saying that after the last two. I mean, that conversation is now over with after the last 2 weeks. I think everybody sees what's going on. By the way, Dolphins' next possession, they drive down for a touchdown, of course. The Texans have a response. No. Kyle Allen, a couple of inaccurate passes. Not looking much different than Davis Mills. Texans finally force a punt near midfield, but then Kyle Allen just throws an awful interception. And Sean, the short throw to Pierce near the line of scrimmage as he's drifting backwards it might have been the worst interception I've seen from the Texans over the years. And that says it was 10 feet over Dameon Pierce's head.
Yeah, that was really, really bad. I thought Allen threw some horrible, horrible balls today. And look, they weren't all his fault. You know, the guy's under pressure, and he's trying to throw the ball away and just prevent himself from turning the ball over. But that's when bad things happen. When you play to not turn the ball over. When you play with that little fraction of hesitancy in your game, and you're not out there in the free flow, the feel, there's no pulse of the game. And it's not like we should have expected that necessarily for a guy that hadn't started a game in, 2 years and 2 weeks, I think, since he'd went down with that broken leg against the Giants when he was a member of Washington. But, like you could even say, okay, well, if he didn't take all the snaps this week, would it have made no, it wouldn't have made much of a difference. Maybe for his overall comfort level, but the result is the result. It would have looked a little bit different, but this change of quarterback wasn't going to really amount to very much, because you still have to throw the ball to the players you have to throw the ball to. And you still have the same guy calling plays. And Pep Hamilton in this system, he is a puppet master. And Allen was going to do whatever he was asked to do, wasn't going to deviate much from the plan. I think he saw that. He had to make a few line changes today when they showed blitz. And of course, they did not. They pulled back, fell into their zone, and they still took pressure off of the edge. Laramie Tunsil, Tytus Howard, the tight ends, Tegan Quatoriano negated a first down on, at the time, was a much more important drive of the game because you weren't down by 30 points at that point. But it's those mistakes that just, add up over time. And this team has a bunch of dudes that aren't going to be members of a football team in the future for another 31. They're going to be looking at the XFL or whatever United States Football League is out there. And it's just not a lot of NFL talent. The Texans are kind of like this, the St. Louis Browns of the NFL. It's like they gave a whole bunch of dudes back in the day an opportunity to play some ball for them that couldn't play for anybody else. And that's kind of what you get.
Yeah. I hear people say they don't have much to throw to. I'm going to throw that out for a second, because I just don't know if you have a quarterback. I don't know if you have an offense. I know we don't have an offensive line up the middle. I know we don't have a quarterback. Yeah. And let me I just got to point this out. You've got Brandon Cooks, which is a consistent 1,000-yard wide receiver year in and year out. You've got Nico Collins, who I think is a good wide receiver. I don't know if he's open all the time, but he doesn't need to be that open. He can make catches in traffic. He's tall. He's a guy that if you give him a shot, which Davis Mills and Kyle Allen, they don't know how to give a wide receiver a shot at the football, maybe when there is a guy on him, by making it a jump ball pass. Yeah. And Jordan Akins, I just want to say this about Jordan Akins. Yeah, he had the fumble, led to the touchdown, maybe trying a little bit too hard to make something happen. He runs into two guys, the ball gets knocked loose. But I'm going to throw that away because he was still out there, and he's out there fighting hard. The touchdown catch in the second half when he broke a couple of tackles was probably the most impressive run after a catch by a Texan player this season. Jordan Akins has come back with this team after being cut, not with his tail between his legs, but man, the guy is giving you effort week in and week out. He's the best tight end on the roster, at least as far as pass catching goes. And, I don't know what Tegan Quatoriano is. So the fact that this team doesn't have guys to catch the ball, Brandon Pierce, you can throw the ball to him and he can if you just get the ball to him and he's open a lot, you can make something happen. And I also have to say, with Quatoriano missing the games, earlier this year and getting back into the flow of things, the injury bug that the Texans have had with the rotten luck with the rookie players, Mechie has cancer. Kenyon missed a ton of valuable time in training camp. Christian Harris has missed a ton of time in camp and during the season. He's out again. Stingley's out right now. I mean, these are all guys that look like they could be players at certain times this year when they have gotten a chance to play and they've been healthy and they've been on the field. Mechie, we don't know about, but we know that he's got potential. I mean, that matters a little bit, Shaun, that you just haven't had these guys with the health that you would like to, in a season where you just want to see as many reps as possible with these guys, not to have them out there as much as they've been and to miss not just time, but valuable time, camp time. It's a big deal.
No, I mean, those are tremendous points that you make, and that should get you excited for next year. To be quite honest with you, because you're going to have a lot more young, talented players coming into the system, presumably with an entirely new staff and a franchise quarterback. All presumably, of course. I think all of that should happen, but that should get you excited. I think Christian Harris is going to be a good player. I think Tegan Quatoriano has shown a lot of promise to be kind of like a total package, kind of a tight end, good blocker, good pass catcher, a guy that can run a little bit. I think he could be very much like a Jordan Akins, be strong through contact and things like that. And what better of a guy right now in this particular situation? Two of them really do you have to learn from in Jordan Akins and OJ Howard if you're Tegan Quatoriano. So, I mean, yeah, I'm excited a lot about some of the young players. And yeah, you make great points. I mean, there are dudes to throw the ball to, but the system is not allowing for it. The route concepts are not allowing for it. I mean, one of the most sickening things I think came on the last or second to last Texan drive. This game where Allen, it was his second and final interception. What was that by Brandon Cooks? I mean, what sort of horrible, dumbass route concept is that where he just flares open and you're going to leave the corner and the high safety on a solo receiver? And Allen's already going to be under pressure when you're trying to throw deep down the field more than 20 yards. And he has to heave the ball, dead duck, intercepted, easiest play ever. I mean, that was almost an easier interception to have than Jalen Petrie missed last week against Washington on the first drive of the game by the Commanders. Your job, if you're an offensive coordinator, a passing game coordinator, you're going to use your best receiver as a decoy to stand at the line of scrimmage, not even a delay or a quick slant or a crossing route to even give the safety a millisecond of thought to go through his head that, oh, crap, let me bite down. Forget about that deep third over there. No, it was an effective 2-on-1. And it's just, you talk about not putting guys in position to be successful. This coaching staff, by design, was not put in position to be successful. These players are not being put in position to be successful by this coaching staff. It is a trickle-down effect. And I firmly believe that there are some good coaches on this staff, but they will not be around, going forward, because you're going to have an entirely new offensive coordinator that will bring in his guys, a head coach that will bring in his guys. And a year from now, we're going to be talking about a bright future, I think. But you got a long way to go. It's just unfortunate because I had a conversation with my wife earlier. She's like, man, you're doing these players a disservice because they're out there every day busting their butt, trying to learn. And it's like, you know what? You're right. That's the business of the NFL. And it takes a lot of guys a long time to figure that out. And it does suck. And that's why you do make a quarterback change, because the players want hope. They want to win. And it takes a day like today maybe to realize that, you know what? You don't have the dudes to do that. You don't have the dudes that you think can get you close. Or 2 weeks ago when you were spitting the noise to the media that, hey, man, we're close. We're close. No, you're not. Today's a defining moment for them in that regard.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Pep, because, look, we don't think the Texans have the talent. I've said it here today. I've said it in the past. There's no doubt about that. Davis Mills is not the guy. Kyle Allen is not the guy. But like I said, I do not think there is some talent on this. I said that the wrong way. I think there's talent on this team in spots, but the issue is when I watch this offense is I don't know what to make of them, because they're the concepts. You talked about the route stuff, but it's the play calling. When the things that they do successful work, they don't go back to them. The play action pass should be absolutely what you start off with. If you're going to throw the ball, you don't start off running the ball 2 times in the game with Dameon Pierce, as much as I like Dameon Pierce, because that's exactly what the other team is gearing up for. It's the screen passes. It's the lack of, when you watch a Dolphin team and you see they spread things out, there's movement, there's misdirection, there's all these sort of things. There's stuff that happens extremely quick that they go to boom, boom, boom. When the quarterback gets the ball, he goes back to pass, the ball's gone. And with the Texans, nothing happens fast. Everything happens slow. There is no misdirection. When you run screen passes that my grandmother knows is coming, And they never fool anybody with the screen. They run screen passes at the wrong time. You run screen passes, inside the other team's 20-yard line. That's not going to work because there's such little space there. Guys are jammed up against the line of scrimmage. They're running screen passes on a 1st and 10. You haven't even pushed the secondary back, pushed the linebackers back yet. At least run something where you at least push them back before you run the screen, so the screen has some trick to it. Because if the screen is just, I'm going to throw to Brandon Cooks immediately, or I'm going to throw to Nico Collins or whoever at the line of scrimmage when nobody's moving back, then how are you getting any space for that? How are you making a play on something like that? And that's the stuff that, like, it's so hard to judge a lot of the positions. I can judge the quarterback because I just don't see it. There's a lot that goes into that you just don't see. But the guys elsewhere on this roster, I have a super hard time. And it would be easier as well for the offensive line if some of these things were going on, because when there is misdirection, there's not defensive linemen and linebackers that can just load up and go, we know exactly what to do because we know what the Texans are going to do right here. It's that obvious.
Yeah, it's extremely obvious. It's very frustrating. It took me a long time, Robert, to, and disclaimer, I'm not trying to pretend that I know more football than anybody, because I learn still every day, every Sunday. I do play-by-play on high school football games, too, a little bit on the side. I learn something all the time when I'm around the game. Okay. And I coached for 10, 11 years doing it. So it took me a long time to be comfortable with it and to get a grasp of the offensive mindset. And it's just so frustrating because you see the fundamentals that the Texans don't do well, from a play calling or preparation standpoint. And it's hard for me to believe and just imagine, put yourself in those players' shoes who in large part have come from some very successful high school programs, very successful college programs, that they probably lost more games in a month's time with the Houston Texans than maybe some of these young kids did, in their high school and collegiate careers combined. And that's just fact. This is the first time they're really going through these kind of adversities and being humbled this way. When you sell to a professional athlete, an NFL player, that here's the game plan on a Wednesday, let's go out and work on it. And Nico Collins said it a couple of weeks back, we feel really good about the game plan on Wednesday, and then Sunday happens. That's just mind-boggling to me that, your 15 plays are scripted. Most teams do that, and the Texans are one of those teams that do that. And your first play of the game is just going to be a straight inside zone run up the middle to establish the run with no play action involved at all, with no effort to make a defense, particular linebackers, the opportunity to think for a millisecond that this could be a pass. That brief little a bit of hesitancy does not exist in the mind of Pep Hamilton. And that is a fireable offense. The guy would have been gone a long time ago if, in fact, this was not an organizational tank. And he's going to be gone. The ideas, the concepts are going to be gone. You're going to have a new, young, probably bright mind in here with exciting, explosive, creative offense, like pretty much everybody else in the NFL and college is running these days. So there's that hope. But I'm just blown away by the lack of mild creativity from Pep Hamilton. It's really criminal, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing that he has a job in the NFL, but we've spent 29 minutes on the Texans. I need to go to something positive from this weekend just for a second. And it's Houston Sports Talk. So we do Astros and Rockets and all that stuff. And I apologize if you want to hear more tears about the Texans, but I think I've done my time on the Texans for today, and Sean has too. But look, the Rockets got 2 wins in a row for the first time this year. They're starting to look like a real team. I thought they started to look like a real team against Golden State. They played a really good game. Steph and Clay were just going off like they were vintage Steph and Clay, or they might have won that game. But Sean, I talked about this with Frank from the start of the year. I said, yeah, there's a lot that's going wrong with the Texans, But man, if Jalen and Jabari start looking like the guys that you drafted top 3 in the draft and start looking like stars, and Jalen has at times this year, and then he had a bad streak, but he's starting to pick it up again. And those two guys, the reason you got them is even with issues, stars make your team better in the NBA. They lift you up and they make you more competitive and make you win games just by having good nights. And, I think people need to understand that this Oklahoma City win the other night, look, that was a schedule loss for Oklahoma City. People don't understand this, but that was their 4th game in 6 nights. The Rockets played 2 games in their last 6 nights. And I know they were second of a back-to-back, but so was Oklahoma City, but they were playing 4 and 6. They couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. But the bottom line is for 3 straight games, Jabari has looked really, really good. He's starting to throw up 20 and 10s. He's starting to make 3-point shots. And Jalen Green, and we've said it from the start, I have talked about this ad nauseum. Jalen Green does not become a star unless he learns how to facilitate. And he is starting to get 6 assists on the rag. He had 9 assists in this last game. That is very important. Part of it is guys are making shots, but part of it is he's starting to figure it out, Sean.
Yeah, I think he is. I think the guy's going to be an absolute star in the league. I think the Rockets have a number of those guys that can play for anybody. And you're starting to see over the course of the last 2.5 games, really, them come together and play some team basketball. I thought the other night against Atlanta when Dejounte Murray and Trae Young are just at will, just dominating Houston. I mean, I think it was Dejounte Murray who threw up that 3 and then Pat, was it Smith or Green on the head? I can't remember who it was.
He patted Jabari on the head, and then
right?
Jabari at the first time out said, I ain't taking that.
And you know what? Space. That is exactly what this team needed, because they needed that. You're testing them. You want to see if they have any nuts about them. I told you this, who's got that piss and vinegar in them to, just kind of fight back, and where's that energy from? You saw that the Rockets responded. And I think that victory, to be able to get that win like they did the other night, that was the first time, to be honest with you, all season long that I stayed engaged from tip to the final buzzer. I mean, I was pumped. That was a tremendous win for the Houston Rockets. And you never know what a win like that can do to a team. And then they come back out and they play like they did against Oklahoma City. They took better care of the ball. They shot the ball well. They assisted well. I mean, they looked like they'd been playing together for years.
Took care of the ball might be an overstatement since they had about 20. I think they had 23 turnovers in that game. They're still turning the ball over like crazy.
The way that they turned the ball over against Atlanta was just egregious, and even against Golden State. I mean, just the stupidity of some of the turnovers. At least against Oklahoma City, yeah, okay, the turnover numbers were there. I'll give you that one. I mean, that's inarguable. But the opportunities that they were trying to take advantage of with some of those passes that they'd made. I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from what a young team is trying to do to, make things happen in a game. When you smell blood, you go for the jugular. And I thought that's what they were really trying to do with a lot of those, passes. And, look, some of them, yes, they're still young, they're learning, and they've got to understand when to pull the ball back or just when, take advantage of the numbers and attack the basket. Ryan Hollins, I love that guy. But he's been saying the same thing all season long, and I'd want to see more of it. And I think over the course of the last couple of games, you're starting to see it. These guys are looking to go to the rim more and create some contact and get to the free throw line. Good things will happen that way, especially when your shot's not falling. For the Rockets, the last 2 games, the shots have kind of been falling too. But where does it start? When they're attacking the basket and they get in the flow of the offense and they're able to get a good defensive stop. I just think, what would we start the season with? Like the over-under was set at what? Like 21, 22, something
23
like that?
and a half was the over-under.
it's a horrible start, but I'll tell you what, I said I think it was a lock to surpass that, and I still kind of believe that. I think they kind of hit their stride, and they got like 3 tough games coming up, back to back against Denver and Phoenix, 2 of the better teams in the Western Conference. But if you can get a split with Denver and get a little revenge and play better just against Phoenix, give yourself an opportunity to win late. So I think Phoenix was one of only like 5 games that got away from the Rockets this year. I think they'll be hungry here in the next few nights when they play Phoenix again, because their confidence has been renewed. So I'm excited to see what this team can do and see how Silas can keep this team responding just based off of, what happened the other night against Atlanta, because sometimes that's enough juice to keep a team going for the next week or two, and they can build off of that.
The other thing that they've got to figure out is they got to figure out a consistent lineup. And that's been my most frustrating thing with Silas, is that he doesn't seem to know from night to night who he's going to go to. And I get it. There's a lot of young guys but there are certain players that it just seems like he doesn't know what to do with. He hasn't figured it out. And I've figured it out, and all the fans have figured it out. We kind of know who these guys are. And look, this Eric Gordon situation, Rafael Stone's got to figure it out. Like, you got to get him off the roster. And the longer it takes, and I guess they're trying to get something, but they can't get what they want for him. And at some point, it's too bad. You missed an opportunity maybe to get a first-round pick or get something for him a year or two ago. And maybe you're going to have to give him away for a lot less than you want. But frankly, a late first-round pick most years would be the most that you would get for a veteran like him. And so if you don't get that late first round pick, okay, but move on. Don't screw up your entire development, and which is what they're doing by playing him instead of Kenyon Martin, who's been fantastic. He had 23 and 15 against the Hawks. And because you're starting Eric Gordon the next night, he got 14 minutes. That's a problem.
Yeah.
And Kenyon Martin has played well enough this year to say, let's see what he can do at the small forward position. And either Stone or Silas, whoever is responsible, like, you need to tell Eric Gordon, we're going to put you back in a reserve role. You can be a guard coming off the bench. We can get you 25 minutes there. And this team, and I've said this from the start of the year, Daishen Nix is not the answer. Okay. So enough with Daishen Nix. Eric Gordon can eat those Daishen Nix minutes and be fine with that. And you could be fine, and you'll live just fine with Eric Gordon playing instead of Daishen Nix. But the key is, when Eric Gordon plays instead of Daishen Nix, it also means that Kenyon Martin plays instead of Daishen Nix. And that matters. And they've got to figure that out. And it's not just Kenyon Martin, but you can up the minutes of Tari Eason, that's shown what he can do. And it also moves those two guys out of playing, maybe taking minutes away from your front court. Shane Goon, who's way better this year. And Jabari, who's Jabari, and Shade Garuba, who's been fantastic. All of those guys that you want to play more minutes. The ripple down effect of not playing Eric Gordon at guard, or just flat out getting him off the roster, it matters all the way down to your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th guy, the guys that you drafted in the first round and you're trying to develop.
Yeah, I preach, man. I don't disagree with that. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time, and I would be shocked if Eric Gordon's here beyond the trade deadline. I think with a guy like that, what he's hoping for is that, look, he's going to do his time here and continue to try and, mentor and help some of these younger players along. And I think that's what the Rockets wanted him to do. And, coming up ahead of the trade deadline, you try to move him. And if you can get him to a contender and you get, probably, I don't even know if it'd be a late first, man. It just kind of depends. But whatever they do get for him, I think it's going to be a situation where they want to give him the best opportunity to go somewhere and help a contender. And they're going to get something in return that Rafael Stone can at least parlay into a higher draft pick with some capital. But I think it's going to happen.
Anybody that they get for him, anywhere he goes, you say go to a contender. Anywhere he goes, it's going to be, nobody's going to trade for him that's not a contender, that's not better off than the Houston Rockets are. And the thing about Eric Gordon is, if you wait till the trade deadline, that's still over 2 months away. And again, this is valuable time. You want to see what these guys can do with more minutes because it helps in your decision making in the offseason. The Texans, you can complain about a lot of things, but they are playing rookies. They're letting them fall on their face. If they work, they work. If they don't, they don't. But they're letting the young guys play. They're not saying, you know what, Jerry Hughes, we got to get you off the field because we got some hot third-round pick that we just drafted. There is no third-round pick. So the veterans that are playing with the Texans are playing because there's nobody else. But the Rockets, they are not playing young guys because of Eric Gordon, and that's an issue.
I understand that, and I'm just kind of speaking from how I think the organization's got to be operating. I mean, the longer you wait, the more valuable Eric Gordon becomes to a contending team that would be willing to trade for him, in terms of what you would be getting in return if you're the Houston Rockets. And that's just the way that I think they're going to end up playing it. I mean, yeah, if Eric Gordon never plays another minute for this basketball team, and if that means, more developmental minutes for some of the younger guys, obviously it's a win-win. But then too, I always hesitate there because I do want to give, the staff a little bit of credit. I just don't think they're stupid. I just think there's reasons behind, what they're doing developmentally. If they're just trying to bring other guys along a little bit slowly, if they're keeping him on the roster because he is a big help behind the scenes, and is important to the growth and development of some players back there. I just think it's going to be one of those situations where it's going to be a little bit more painful before, you're relieved of his duties. And the Rockets are going to wait, I think, right up until the last minute. And when they feel like they can get, optimal value for him in return, then they'll pull the trigger and make that move.
I hear Steven Silas say occasionally that Eric Gordon is a guy that, is valuable because of his veteran leadership. I've never heard the other young players say, you know what, Eric Gordon has helped me with this, and Eric Gordon has helped me with that, and Eric Gordon has done this. And I watch Eric Gordon as a player. He's not a vocal guy out on the court.
Right.
He doesn't seem a vocal guy with the guys in the huddle. I don't see that. And if he is going to be a leader, leading by example does me no good, frankly, with leadership from a veteran. I don't need a leader leader by example is fine when you've got other leaders that are already there that are leading vocally. But the Rockets don't have a necessarily perfect vocal leader right now, not until Jalen and Jabari get the confidence where they can say, this is what I think, and this is what we need to do, and you guys need to step up. So that's my thing with Eric Gordon. And it's not about you have to get him off the roster. Like, to me, Raphael Stone has got to realize Daishen Nix is not him. To borrow the kids' phrase, he ain't him. I'm telling you, he ain't him. And he is not even good enough to be a backup. There is nothing that Daishen Nix does. And I keep saying this over and over again because I feel like the Rockets at some point might hear me. There's nothing he does that is good. There's nothing. He is not good as an NBA player at anything. Now, does that mean he's a bad at basketball? No, but this is the NBA. This is the best of the best. And when you don't do anything great, I mean, I see this guy, he can't dribble all that great, even though he's supposed to be a point guard. He's a decent shooter when the shot's open now, but he's not a knockdown shooter. He's not a guy that's like, doing everything he can to get that open shot because he knows he can hit it. He's terrible at finishing around the basket. His defense is not good. His rebounding isn't good. I mean, he's a below average player at just about everything. If you want to say he's a average 3-point shooter, okay, but that's it. Okay. Being average at one skill is not good enough to be on an NBA court. Even the backups, you've got to be great at something. You got to be great at shooting or rebounding or playing defense. You have to be great at one thing. That's what makes you an NBA player, in my opinion, is you're great at one skill, even if you're not a superstar and great at multiple skills. Sean, that's just my feeling on that.
No, and I get it. And look, the Rockets are another season away, I think, before, you're seeing the roster constructed that reflects, those things. They gave Daishen Nix every opportunity, to get better. And I mean, look, we're still less than 20 games into this season. And I'm sure there was probably some sort of timeline that they had on him. And just like they do a number of these other players to show me something, to see what you can do. And that really does fall on Silas's shoulders as well. Because as you mentioned, it was a great point, and you do need to start seeing some sort of consistency and continuity being built with these lineups that he's putting out on the floor. Stick with something and let's see it develop. And Daishen Nix probably doesn't need to be a part of that. However, I do struggle because with a guy like Daishen Nix, I saw some stuff in him last year that I really liked. And I thought like, especially in basketball with a guy like that, if you can find a role and accept it, it may not be here, but he could flourish elsewhere. And I just don't ever like quitting on players, like that, especially with that experience, the very little that Daishen Nix does have, and with this team as it's gone through like the ebbs and flows. And so I would like to see him in a different system before I make a personal assertion on him. But I just don't think it works well here. And I think you're going to continue to see that over the course of this season with some guys that, they could be good young players, but not here. And what this Rockets team is missing right now is that vocal leadership, that veteran leadership in different areas and different facets and what Eric Gordon alone can bring you. And that's something that when you feel like this team is close this offseason, hell, maybe even towards the trade deadline, to be quite honest with you, if they're able to get another guy or two in here that can maybe take this team to the finish and get into an off season and into a training camp for next year when this team is looking like they're ready to be competitive, then I think we start to talk about like, okay, this team is getting a little bit closer. Okay, now we're starting to see some growth.
Yeah, I don't see it, Daishen Nix. And it's not just that I don't see it physically. I don't see it mentally. He throws the ball away a lot. He's not out there hustling all the time. I mean, there's just zero that I like about him as an NBA player. And I've watched all of it last year, and I watched him during summer league, and I've watched him during preseason this year, and I've watched him during the regular season. And I want these guys to do well. It is not personal against anybody, but I'm sorry, Daishen Nix is not an NBA player, and quit trying to make him an NBA player, especially when you can move Eric Gordon to the backcourt and let Kenyon Martin, who, by the way, wants to stay here, but he's not going to want to stay here forever if you don't play him when he's putting up a 23 and 15, when you give him a chance to start. And he's playing as well as he has, and he's affecting winning. When you look at plus minus on the Rockets, that guy is at the top of anybody that's getting any sort of real minutes. It's Kenyon Martin. So like, this guy deserves to play more. And you can't, at the expense of Daishen Nix and Eric Gordon, who's not even going to be here in a couple of years, you can't undermine all that that you got from Kenyon Martin after stealing him in the second round by not playing him because of those guys. You just can't do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point. But it's a lack of consistency, because all those things that you just mentioned, particularly Daishen Nix, are things that I thought, he showed promise in at one time or another, in particular last season. I don't recall Summer League. I'm sure I was looking really more at Smith and Summer League and Tari Eason and some other guys at that point in time. But boy, I took a lot of notes on Nix, and I talked to my brother, Ali Khan about Nix, and he told me, look, the Rockets are really high on him, and they're going to give him an opportunity. And so I really started to pay attention to him, and it's just a lack of consistency, Robert, because all those things that you talk about with him being careless with the basketball and not showing that heart hustle. Look, I didn't see that a lot from anybody really with this Rockets team last year, but and that's where you really want a guy like Eric Gordon to kind of, help these guys grow. But we hadn't seen that to this point. It's just going to come from within with these younger guys. But it's just about being consistent. And you gotta find whatever it is to come out with that energy every single night. And that's what makes or breaks a lot of these younger players. They're all talented. They all have that one thing, but can they do it within a team concept? And I think it's been incredibly difficult to do when you talk about what did and didn't happen last year. This year, we're supposed to start seeing this. This is why Silas still has a job, is because you're supposed to go from development to creating a little bit of chemistry and continuity and team basketball and togetherness. And I think we maybe, 18, 19 games into the season right now, if it's even for a flash, we're starting to see that. Now, how can they bottle that up and put that out there for a 48-minute game every single night? That's on Silas.
Yeah, we'll see what they continue to do, because I've been very critical of them. But if they turn it around, I'll be the first to tell you maybe I was wrong. Maybe all of his genius was happening behind the scenes, and it all came together at the right time. And look, like I said, and I'm going to repeat it over and over again because it's worth repeating. If Jalen and Jabari are stars and they start playing like stars, like it doesn't, a lot of other things just don't matter. You can have bad coaching, but if you have star players, it sometimes overtakes that. It's going to matter in the end when you get good enough to be in the playoffs and you're trying to win a championship. And that's one of the things that I'm concerned about with Silas, because there's a lot of little things that I worry about him when I watch this team play, but it's going to matter. But let's close it out, because we've done like 20 minutes, almost as much as we've done on the Texans, and they're worth more than the Texans these days. But
it's good to talk some Rocket basketball, man. That's what I'm excited about going forward.
Yeah, we're going to talk some more Rockets during the week. I'm hoping to get Frank on again this week to talk a little bit about the Rockets as well, and keep us up to date as well with everything that's going on with the Texans. Is Sean, who's going to be out at the NRG Stadium every single day for Sports Radio 610. So he'll have updates on all that. I'm sure Levy's going to tell him as soon as he's decided that he no longer wants to coach the Texans. He'll tell Sean about it first person. But no, we're gonna find out what's going on out there and keep you guys up to date. But thanks again to everybody that's listening, staying with the show through all of this. You're going to be there on the ground floor with the Texans, that's for sure. We'll keep you up to date on everything that's going on, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more exciting next week with Deshaun Watson coming to the building next week. Sean,
I can't wait. Can't wait to see all the memes on Twitter and Facebook and social media this week with Deshaun. That's going to be fantastic stuff. Once again, disclaimer: I will not be a part of that craziness and going into the Browns locker room or at the podium. I'll be in the Texans locker room, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of react leading up to and the aftermath of Deshaun Watson and the Browns invading NRG.
It should be a circus. Looking forward to what's going to happen with all that next week. Looking forward to talk to you guys in the next couple of days as we start having some guests this week and going into the post game next week. And we'll talk to you real soon. Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your weekend.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.